So, hi Sapna, and welcome to the show.
Hi Melissa, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Now, Sapna, I've really enjoyed reading your book, Let's Get Visible, which is all about demystifying branding, breaking it down, and giving a really, yes, exactly that one, a nice, easy to miss cover, and really demystifying branding, giving people a really clear framework on how to get that right in their business. So, I'd really love to speak to you a bit more about that. But before we do, could you take a step back and kind of tell us, how did you get here? How did you become a branding strategist in the first place?
So I studied graphic design long time ago, and then whilst I was doing my design course, it was a 3-year degree, but I realised that we were coming out of that with no idea about business. I knew I wanted to work with business owners and businesses, so I decided to take a postgrad in marketing to understand the business side of things and how design specifically fits into the marketing mix. And I figured that if I could learn business speak and marketing speak as well, I'd be able to speak to my clients in their business, in their language.
Yeah.
And that would become my unique selling point, if you like. So and that's what happened. So I studied design, studied marketing, and then worked as in marketing, was briefing design agencies, as marketing people do. Started to experience frustrations of, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners and viewers will have experienced this, where you give a brief to a designer and then it comes back and you're like, that's not what was in my head. That's not quite how I meant it to turn out. There was all those frustrations. Also being kind of, sort of channeled down a route, creative route, maybe that you're not completely sure of. I've had all of these things happen with my clients, not working with me. And so I kind of experienced those frustrations. And then I also experienced frustrations when I worked in design agencies of clients kind of, hanging over my shoulder and kind of going, can you make the logo bigger? And all the, and asking for things that were maybe not possible or that looked awful. So there was this, both sides of the frustrations. And so the book was written really after 25 years of working in, not just in design and marketing, but also I've worked in advertising, and I've worked for big media owners like the Telegraph Media Group and EMAP, now Bauer Media. So a big sort of national media company. So I've got a comms background as well. So the whole thing was like, actually brand is not just about a logo. And it was these conversations that I was having with clients all the time, and I decided to put them in a book. So that's kind of where the book came out. It was conversations that I've had with my clients, questions that they've asked me about brand, and I created this 6-step vision process to kind of, as you say, demystify brand for the business owner, from the business owner's point of view, and put it in language that they understand, and take the scariness away from it. So that's kind of where the book came from.
And I love that you've really balanced the graphics and the visual side with the business side. And we were talking previously about my background was, my first degree was in design management, which is exactly that, how to manage to understand the business side, because we were always told, the CEO is always going to want a nice shiny brochure, but that's very rarely the right thing to do to solve their business strategy, and that's aligned with where they're trying to go with it as a business. So you need to really understand that. And at the same time, the designers are creatives. They love producing these amazing graphics, but they also need to be led as to what the outcomes need to be to work for your business as well. So it's all bringing all of that together. And as you said, it's kind of rare to have a way of communicating between the two. And that's why I really connected with your framework, because I could see how powerful it was in its simplicity, but also knowing that simplicity doesn't come without a lot of thinking and experience and mistakes and everything behind that leads you to that simple framework that actually works for anyone who cares to kind of take that approach to it, which I highly recommend. So when it came to, you mentioned that you worked in large businesses, you worked in marketing and advertising. How did you get from that to being your own, to having your own business?
Children. It's just generally the game changer, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, when I had my first child, I was still working in media up until the point of having my firstborn, who's now 10, and I went back into media, but working as a part-time freelance media consultant. I didn't actually know what that was going to transpire as being, but I put it on my LinkedIn profile, messaged a few ex-bosses, and said, right, I'm available. But I only wanted to work 3 days a week, and spend 4 days with my child because I wanted to be his primary carer. So everybody, of course, wanted someone full time, and I was like, well, no, I'll be cheaper, and I can get this job done in 3 days because of my experience. So that's what I ended up happening. I ended up having my own business, working just 3 days a week as a freelancer. And then when my second child came along a couple of years later, I got postnatal depression, and really couldn't cope with even getting out of bed, before 11 a.m. and getting out of the house before 11 a.m. felt like a real achievement. So I'd gone from, I felt with my first child that I was really like owning motherhood and really rocking it. And God, I can balance this whole, work-life balance. And I'm only working for 3 days, and it all seemed brilliant. And I was volunteer for a local parenting group as well, so I had everything going on, and the second one, nothing. So I ended up taking time out. I was diagnosed as having postnatal depression, and I took some time out just to heal myself and look after my baby and my toddler. And that ended up being 3 years. I took a degree in, because I can't actually sit at home and not do anything for myself. It wasn't just for the babies. I needed something to still my mind and to get focused on. So I did a degree in interior design. And that was another passion, because I like, sort of making places look nice as well. I just like things to work better and function better and look nice. So I did that, and then my husband started an entrepreneur course whilst I was at stay-at-home mum, and I obviously did his branding. Otherwise, if he'd gone anywhere else, I would have divorced him, clearly. So I did his branding and I did his brochure. His brochure got picked up at an entrepreneur event, and there was like 65 entrepreneurs in the room, and the speaker picked it up and said, "This, guys, is the gold standard. This is what you should be aiming for. Andy, can you get up and tell us how you achieve this?" So he got up and talked about the process, and then a few hands went up at the end of the speech, and he said, and they said, "Well, yeah, but how did you make it look so good?" And he said, "Oh, my wife's a graphic designer." So he came home that day. I was told the story. I had a baby on my hip and a toddler at my feet, and I was trying to cook tea, and it was all a bit chaotic. And he came home and he gave me 7 business cards. He just handed them over. He went, "These are for you." And I was like, "What are they?" And he said, "People that want to work with you." And so I was a bit like, I hadn't actually seen the obvious thing that was in front of my face, which was with the design, the marketing, the advertising, the comms experience, that I could actually help other entrepreneurs to get their message across, to make them more visible, hence the title of the book, Let's Get Visible, but to actually, make them look great and communicate clearly. And that's and why I'd spent all this time doing another degree, I had no idea. But that's kind of how my business began. It was an accidental business, but that was nearly 5 years ago.
Great.
So,
yeah. And I think that's often the case, isn't it? That we miss our core strengths and what's most valuable about ourselves. And we don't always recognize that. And in fact, I was just speaking with a client just now, and we've done an exercise about finding your zone of genius, where basically all you do is email or call a small number of people who really know you, that you trust, and ask them, what have you noticed that I'm really good at that you don't feel I've noticed myself?
wow.
Yeah, and it's amazing the response you'll get back. And often you think, oh, they're going to say this, and then they come back with all these amazing other things, and it's helped her to see what her next steps in business should be, because there was a whole area of value that she'd been discounting, that she thought she wasn't very good at communication because of something a boss told her a few years ago.
Oh, they were sick.
Yeah. And then everyone has come back to say that that's actually what they think she's really strong at, and that she can do this and that and the other. And she's like, wow, these were things I thought were my weaknesses, but now I'm starting to see them very differently, and it's going to really help shape her business going forward, understanding that. But we often don't see these things. So it's great if we can have someone to shine a light on that, or as your husband did, to say, you know, everyone says you're amazing, and you had that sign that you needed to take that next step with, well, you're a very big sign, 7 potential clients already to get started with.
Yeah. I mean, I figured I could start an interior design business with 0 clients, or here I had, 7 in the hand. So it was this light bulb moment. But obviously, my mind was fuddled with the PND as well. So I wasn't really thinking massively straight at the time. So it needed somebody else to shine that light on. And that's what we do with our clients as well. When we work with them, quite often, a lot of my clients will, when I'm working through, so that can I tell you a little bit about the process? I know you've read the book, but I'll tell you. So the 6-step vision process creates a brand basically that will really connect with your target audience, and that you're going to love and feel real ownership of. But the first 3 sections, VIS, it's the vision process. So VIS are visualize in a brand and stand out, and they are all about strategy. So that gets the business strategy and the marketing strategy kind of is the base of where we're going to take this brand. It's not enough for, a lot of designers may say, well, what's your favorite colors? Or they might ask about your target market, but, and then they'll ask about, what, do you like this color, or do you like this typeface? And actually that doesn't come until step 4, where we start to kind of pull together image.
Yeah.
So I think, I've always looked at design as a way of solving a business problem. And so we look at what is the problem and where do you want to go? What's the business aspiration? In Visualize, we look at your aspirational brands. That's looking at other brands outside of your business and maybe even outside of your industry, and kind of going, well, what is it about those brands that I aspire to be like for my company? Why, it might be customer experience, or it might be the UX of a website, or it might be the brand loyalty, the massive loyalty that these brands have, or the great reputation. And what it gets business owners, I called it the FAB exercise, the 5 aspirational brands. And it gets people thinking about brand in a much wider way than just a logo, because an awful lot of business owners will think, certainly when they're starting out, in the early years, right, I need to get a logo. I've got a new business, I need to get a logo sorted. And actually, no, you need to get your brand sorted, and your brand is so much bigger. I always equate the logo as being like the tip of an iceberg, and it's the most visible part that you will be able to see because it goes across everything. But the stuff above the water is your branding. And that's also the imagery and the colors and the typefaces and the styling and the messaging, all the stuff that's visual. But then underneath the water is the stuff that's really going to keep your brand steady and help it grow. So the vision process starts with that stuff that's really important. Why do people connect with a brand? Why do they feel passionate about it? Why are they going to choose you over working with anybody else? So that's kind of in the inner brand, the second stage. So we do Visualize, which are the fab brands, and then we look at your vision, where you are now and where you want to go over the next 3 to 5 years. Because I always say any brand that you get created for you, any branding you get created, has to kind of last you 3 to 5 years, because you need to build that repetition and that familiarity in the market as well. And also you don't want to be wasting your money and chopping and changing every year. And then it's your customer vision. Who are they? Where are they right now? And how are you going to transform their life? What's the transformation that you bring by working with you? So that, and that's quite often people kind of go, oh wow, I hadn't thought about it that way, that I'm transforming people's lives in some way, so think about the transformation. And then so we move to inner brand, which is where the connection stuff happens. And it's like, well, what are your values? What are your non-negotiables? The company values. These are not necessarily your personal values. So you're not going to start a company with values opposite to your own. It's what are the values that people are going to be attracted to your company and want to work with you because of. And obviously people sort of feel connected to companies that share their values, share their worldview. So if you want to attract a certain tribe, then that's kind of what you need to be putting out there. And then the next part of inner brand is your brand personality. So if your brand was a person, what kind of person would they be? Would they be friendly? Would they be professional? Would they be cool? And would they be warm? Kind of all these. And again, that sort of portrays itself in the imagery that you use and the colors that you use. So you're thinking about personality as your brand being a person, because people want to make a connection, a personal connection. Once you've got their hearts and minds, then you can move to the next stage. And then brand voice. So what language do we use? What, is it positive language? Is it, shouty language? Is it authoritative? Is it calm? So we talk about what's the vocabulary that you should use, what vocabulary shouldn't you use, in order to keep that brand messaging consistent. Consistency is key as you're building a brand, because if you're not consistent, then people don't recognize you when you show up.
Yeah, and if you want people to build trust in you and to be credible, if you're turning up with a different tone of voice every day, a different message, different words, people aren't going to trust you. You're going to be seen as schizophrenic.
Exactly, and it's a word I use. I don't know if it's PC anymore to use that, but yeah, your brand can come across as schizophrenic. And it's like if you had a friend and every time they turned up, they'd be wearing one day they're a rocker and another day they're a hippie and another day they're kind of dressed really posh, and and you're kind of like, who are you? So it's much harder to get to know a brand and to identify. People want to identify with brands that they feel are like them. So turning up and not being afraid to stand out. So the next stage is stand out in the vision process, the third stage. And that's very much about, my whole philosophy is that there's so much visual information out there. There's so much, there's video and there's blog posts and there's, YouTube and Twitter and, I think it was like 3 million, I can't remember the figures now, but huge amounts of video that were uploaded onto YouTube every day, and thousands and thousands of photos on Facebook. So how do you stand out as a business owner? It can be a bit overwhelming when you sort of think, there's always, how do I stand out? And Let's Get Visible is based on the fact that you've got less than 6 seconds to make a great first impression.
Yeah.
And that first second is about actually catching people's eye, and you need to stand out. So having a great brand, having great branding, having something that's eye-catching, and that you don't get bored. You should be, as a business owner, you should be getting bored of your branding, because it should be that consistent. But actually people who are seeing it are only seeing 5 to 10% of what you put out there, if you're lucky. So that consistency is really important for them, to recognize you each time you show up. So stand out is about looking different as well from your competition, actually understanding the visual language of your industry, because there's always a visual language for every industry. The organics industry, for example, Melissa, what colors do you think of when I say organics?
Oh, green, brown, earthy tones.
Yes, right, exactly. So, arguably, if you then had a brand that was in that organics field and you wanted to stand out, you might change the colours that you're using. There'll be other visual clues to tell people that you are in the organics industry. There might be, so some of the imagery around organics are like leaves and trees and things like that, right? So, but if you do leaves and trees and you do greens and browns, you're pretty much going to look like everybody else in your industry. So I sort of say there's 3 elements to building your brand. It's type, color, and imagery. Your branding, type, color, and imagery. And if you just even twist up one of those things, then you're doing something that kind of catches the eye, and people will look again. And that's all you need. To break through that 6 seconds. If you're scrolling, there's 96 meters of social media we scroll through every day. Did you know that?
That's incredible.
It's incredible. That's the height of Big Ben. So how do you stand out? And you need somebody to just go, oh, just for a second, and then only then will they kind of get to find out what you do, what your message is, and how you might be able to help them. So getting visible is the first step.
Yeah.
And that
can take a bit of courage sometimes as well, because I think a lot of people, yes, they understand the theory, I need to stand out amongst my competitors and be different, but do you have any people push back on that and are afraid to be that visible?
Well, it's interesting, actually, no, because I take them through the process. By the time we get to stand out, we do a competitor analysis, and I kind of go, so if you're a business coach, I'd say Google business coach logos, right? And then we see the sea of logos that come up, and they all look fairly similar. And I can tell you that business coach logos will have a predominance of blue, because that's meant to be professional. And they may have a predominance of quite sort of maybe capital letters, or I'm not doing it live right now, but there'll be a certain look and feel to the typefaces. There'll be a certain look and feel to the colours. And there may be for imagery. When I was working with a VA the other day, where we typed in, VA services or virtual assistant services, and lots of women, cartoon women with headsets, so it was 50s style headsets and laptops, and lots of pink, because they're girls, right? So, and she was just like, oh God, I hate, and one way to stand out is to not do what everybody else is doing. When others are zig, you zag. And she was like, this is so not her, she's not girly, and she's not a pink kind of, so it was, and she hated the floral script that was used in a lot of these. And it was like, well, we're going to do something completely different. And we did, an identity which actually had a French Bulldog as the character with it, and it was black, white and bright orange, and the French Bulldog had a pair of glasses on that was bright orange, and it was just this lovely little character we created, which she named Horatio, keeper of the hours, and she absolutely adores him, and he pops up on her social media feeds. And the idea was that she's like having a dog. It's man's best friend. Having a VA is like, it's your best friend. It's there, it's got your back, it's going to protect you, it's going to look after you, it's going to be loyal. So it's all these sort of things that people sort of feel warm when you look at this dog. And it was quite funny because we were saying you can't really use a cat for that, because a cat would be sat there going, I can do your job better than you can. But dogs are faithful. So it was this. It was something that absolutely makes us stand out in our industry, because nobody else is doing the same as that. So you can have a bit of fun with it. And actually, when I ask the question, do you want to stand out, or do you want to blend in? Everybody's like, well, no, we want to stand out. That's kind of the point of working with me. So I guess if you don't want to stand out, then I'm not your ideal brand consultant to work with, because my big thing is about helping people stand out in their industry in order to supercharge their business growth.
Yeah, fantastic. And I totally agree as well. You've got to be you out there. And listening to this podcast, that's one of the standout points that has come across time and time again, is that everyone's business has really taken off, and they've felt different as a business owner the moment they really settled upon who they are, what they want to stand up for. And it's not always obvious from the beginning if you haven't gone through a system like yours. It can take a while to make a few wrong turns and just go, okay, well, I think I'm going to love this, and then discover, actually, no, I don't. And, oh, I really want to work with this client. And then you work with them, you think, no, I don't.
Yeah.
But I think that having that framework is a shortcut to all of your decision making. It's not just about the visual representation that you have, but every decision you make within the organization, to the way you serve your clients, to the way you the kind of products you create, and the way you talk about them as well. I think branding, people, as you said with that great analogy of the iceberg, people don't realize just how deep your brand goes in, and how much of it represents everything about you. And that doesn't just signal to the clients, but also to yourself, to your client, to your staff. It can help you really attract the right people in the first place to your business, and create an amazing culture that then furthers your vision even more, because it all works seamlessly. And I think having your brand in place the way that you've explained it is so important. And I think a lot of people miss that. As you say, they just think, oh, I need a logo. Worse still, they put it out to a whole bunch of people who aren't their ideal clients and say, which logo shall I choose?
Oh gosh, I hate that. Yeah, and generally, and some people, you work with a designer and they'll give you 8 different versions of a logo, or 8 different variants, or 30. I've had, and it's like, well, I'm sure people think, well, I'm the client, I don't know. You should, as a designer, as a brand consultant, I'm there to guide you to the right choices, and I don't let my, I do this 1-day brand workshop where I actually create the brand in a day with the business owner, because the vision process works that well. We do the strategy in the morning, we do the design in the afternoon, and it all comes together. And it's not just a logo, you get, business cards, social media icons, brand guidelines, so the whole thing, so you can actually go away and go, right, now I know I've got my typefaces, my colors, my imagery. That is an entire thing that we get to do in a day. But it's such a strong process that you can actually once people have got that, then they can then roll that out on their social media, they can roll it out on their websites, they can roll it out on their brochures, and it brings that consistency again that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's, you know, people kind of go, oh, it's not just a logo. I thought brand was a logo, and it's not, is it? And your brand is your entire customer experience, right?
Yeah.
So that's from everything from down here as well to what they see. It's how they feel. It's how people feel about your brand. And Jeff Bezos, I think, said your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah.
And the message I was going out with through lockdown is, right now nobody's in the room. Nobody's in your room. You're in your room and I'm in my room, but what are people saying about your brand? Because we're not there in front of our clients. So your brand is actually more important than ever right now, when we can't be in front of our ideal clients in person.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can't own what your brand means to the person in their mind, because that's where the brand sits, is in your client's mind or your prospect. However, there is a lot of how you come across that you can control, like the consistency, as you said, is really important. And being seen, because people spend like 99.9% of their day on other people's websites, other people's social media. So if you aren't consistent, they're not going to remember who you are. So they need to, as they're scrolling or going different places, to build this consistent image of who you are, what you represent, and for you to stand out, as you say, and that, oh yes, I remember Sapna with the red and the black spots, you know, it really stands out.
It's really funny, actually. I've got a client, Rebecca, who she's in the book, and she's very strong. She actually came to me and she was like, oh, I want black and white, you know, because I always wear black and I love black and white, and I just want my black and white, you know, logo, whatever. And it was like, okay, you know, we're working together through the day. I went, just humour me here. And I put some sunshine yellow into her logo, and she went, oh my God, I love it. Anyway, so then she went mad for yellow. And every single social media post came up, and there was yellow there was, you know. And one day somebody had posted, I don't think it was her that had posted it, but somebody had posted a photo of her at an event. And obviously it didn't have the yellow on it. Like, and also it wasn't her event, so she wasn't wearing black. She was wearing a black dress with a Dixie floral print on. And I was just doing my 96 meters, you know, social media scrolling that day. And I nearly went straight past her. And I stopped and I went back again, and I was like, oh my God. And I actually messaged her and I went, there was no yellow on that post. I didn't recognize it as yours. It was just because you need that flash if you're going that fast, you know. And I remember going to a talk before my book came out. I was invited to speak at a local business event, and it was a friend of mine that runs it. And I thought, well, you know, I probably didn't take it as seriously. I shouldn't say that, but you know, I just thought, well, it's amongst friends. There was a lot of people that I knew that were going to be there. It was going to be in a cafe. It wasn't on a stage in front of a load of strangers. You know, there was about 30, 40 people there. So I went to do my book talk, and my friend Emily came up to me afterwards, and she went, "Oh, you did really well," but she went, "You're not wearing red." And I went, all right, I'm wearing black and white. I was wearing black and white, which I figured with my other brand colours. I just wasn't feeling red that day because it was a local cafe. And she went, no, you're not wearing red. I was going to wear my red dress. And I thought, no, I'm not going to wear a red dress because Sapna's speaking and she'll be wearing red. And she went, no, you're not wearing it. I could have worn my red dress. And I was like, oh, I didn't realise it had become an expectation.
Yeah.
For you know, I noticed it in Rebecca's post, but then I didn't notice it in my own. And so now, lo and behold, you know, I'm talking to you and I'm wearing red. So it was quite funny because I went out then and went and bought 4 or 5 red dresses because I thought, well, I've only got one red dress. You know, I wasn't wearing it that often pre the book. And so I went and bought 4 or 5 red dresses. Of course, then lockdown happened. So they're all upstairs with their labels on. I haven't managed to wear any of them, and I hope I can still fit into them eventually. But then I had to go get loads of Zoom tops in red. For when I show up, because I've realised that actually that visual cue when it shows up on social media really helps people recognise, and I wasn't doing it myself.
Yeah, exactly. And there's one lady, Sigrun, do you know her, with her blonde hair and her red? It really stands out. Everything is right. Red. And there was a lady in the shopping centre the other day wearing and I was like, oh my gosh, it's Sigrun. But that was my first thought it was her. It wasn't. It was a complete stranger who happened to have blonde hair and red. But you know, that was my first instinct. Was like, oh, it's Sigrun. And so she's really, when you're that consistent, you are top of mind and people remember you. And it's really, very, very powerful. And it can be just the simple things, these simple visual clues.
Yeah, yeah.
Cues even. So if someone is out there thinking, oh yeah, I need to work with my brand, but I'm probably not far enough into my business yet, or I need a huge budget, or what kind of advice would you give them? What is the point where someone should go to a brand consultant to get started?
Well, there's lots of different questions in there. What first one was budget, and that's a kind of highly contentious issue in the branding world, because obviously, you know, you can go to someone and get something off Fiverr. I wouldn't say that they're creating you a brand, they're creating you a logo, which is still the tip of that iceberg. And that's sometimes enough to start people off. But I think if you want to build a business and build a brand, then you need to, really, I mean, you don't need to necessarily work with a brand consultant straight away. I mean, I'm going to plug the book, buy the book, but it is a step-by-step journey. It will take you through at least the first 3 sections you can do on your own, to really understand your vision, your values, where you want to take this brand, your customer, all of that stuff, and also the visual cues in your industry. That stuff is all strategy, and you can do that on your own if you follow the book. And then what that will do is equip you to be able to give a better brief to whichever designer you choose to work with. And I think, you know, I've had clients saying, oh, you know, I worked with so-and-so before and that designer was really crap. And I sometimes think actually it's not maybe the quality of the designer, because it's not the designer's job to know your brand or to create your brand. It's actually your job to create your brand. You are your brand, or your business is your responsibility. And the designer is just there to make it visual. So it's down to you as a business owner to understand what it is that you stand for, and where you want to go, and how you want to connect with your audience before you turn to a designer and just go, oh, can I have a logo? That's you know, sloppy delegation. So I think the more you put into it yourself as a business owner, the more you will get out of it, no matter who you choose as a designer. Yeah. But obviously, you know, when people work with me, then I take them through that journey. And we supercharge it in a day. You know, it's like I always think, well, they're 8 hours and my 8 hours. That's a 16-hour project, really, just supercharged. And one of the things that I thought, well, you know, entrepreneurs don't have time. One of the things that entrepreneurs don't have is time. So if I could condense this process and actually make it that power, and that's kind of what you know, that's our kind of startup. We work with startups on that. And that's kind of the, you know, the lower level of the projects that we work with. But it's a great way to get started. And the thing is, I always say, well, we don't sell logos, we sell confidence and clarity. Yeah. Because actually that's what people come away with. I have people come out and they almost look 2-3 inches taller because they say a big weight has been lifted off them by having all this stuff sorted. And then they just feel, and I've had people saying, I've got to live up to this now. I've got to be this good. You know what you were saying before about, you know, it sets a bar almost, like not just for the business owner, but for staff as well. You know, I had one client that I worked with, and he said it made my chest swell with pride, and my shoulders lift up, and my husband went, gosh, sounds like a Wonder Bar ad. But he was just talking in these glowing terms, and this is a guy who restores windows for a living, So you wouldn't have thought he would get all poetic about branding, but he was like, this has set the bar for the rest of my staff to live up to, for me and my staff to live up to, and it sets that standard. And you know, and that's the power of having, you know, actually working on your brand rather than just a logo, is it can affect you and your customers and your clients and your staff on a very deep level.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Yeah, I see that sometimes with clients that come and work with me, that it's a signal to themselves that they're taking themselves and their business seriously. And very often before we even have our first session together, or before they actually get stuck into the group materials, and things have changed. I have one client, and between signing up for the program and joining, she got 7 new clients. And she says, well, I kind of figured if I'm going to start something new, I should actually like catch up with where I am. So I went back to all these people who said they were interested, and then she got the clients. But she already had these people, but wasn't necessarily in a position where she was taking things seriously and really, like knuckling down and getting on with the work. And so just investing in herself made that happen. And I think
Was
with the
that investing in
branding,
yourself from a coaching point of view or from a brand point of view?
from a coaching point of view, but I think it's the same with the brand. As soon as you
Yeah.
invest in, okay, I want to stand for something, then, and going through that process to define what that is and how you're going to visually represent it and how you're going to like come across, make sure everyone understands what you stand for from every touch point they have with you, then as you say, you're going to step into that yourself and things are going to change. So I think it goes deeper into your role as a business leader, even if you are just like a one-man shop with a one lady shop making small candles or something like that. You know, it, once you start to take that seriously and put your kind of line in the sand, say this is what I'm about, this is who I am, this is what I'm, as you said, the transformation I'm making out there, then everything can change in your business as well. So I always think it's, you know, having a background where I've done branding and marketing and graphics myself, I know the importance, and I would never dream of doing it myself. I always go to a professional because I know the quality of difference is going to be enormous, and they can see what I can't as well. So it's always a better result than if I was just to have a go myself. So I think it's always a worthwhile investment. But as you said, to see what you can invest in that, whether it's going to a consultant or investing the time to work through it yourself and using a framework like the one you presented in your book.
Yeah. I mean, I've got another model in the book called the Do Say See model. I don't know if you read about that. And
Yes.
it was identifying those mistakes that people make from working over the last 4 or 5 years with entrepreneurs, that, you know, they focus on what they do. And that's the nuts and bolts of their, you know, their business, and how they're going to make money, how they're going to make difference to the world, and what they need to achieve that. And then they focus on their say, which is, well, we need to tell people about it, and we need to articulate our value to our audience. But the last thing they think about, it usually is the last, is the see, which is, what are those first impressions? What do people see when they look at your brand? And that's the bit where they try and do it on the cheap, do it themselves, you know, get their mum to do it. I had one client who got her mum to redesign her logo. That didn't work so well. You know, or get them make with a Mac. And that's the bit where actually that's the first impression, is how your customers come at it. It's not do, say, see, as the business owner does, but it's see, say, do, because it's that first impression. Only if they like that first impression will they then read, you know, what what you've got to say, and then find out what you're going to do. So we use visual clues as a way of, it's like when you said you thought you bumped into that lady. You know, it's the visual clues that first fire off. As your baby, when you open your eyes, that's how you kind of take your information in from the world. First thing. And as cavemen, we would, you look at a piece of, even now we look at a piece of fruit, and if it looks bad, we won't eat it. You don't have to taste it. You don't have to sample the goods to know if an apple's rotten or if a banana's gone overripe and you don't want to eat it anymore. So visual clues are how we kind of make sense of the world.
Yeah, exactly. If you go on a website and it looks appealing and it's as you expect and it gives that great impression, then you're more likely to hang out there than on one that doesn't.
Well, yeah, if you're saying you've got a quality if you've got a quality product or service, and you're saying you've got a quality product or service, then your website, as you say, doesn't look it. That instantly causes like a lack of trust. Like, you kind of go, the website's not loading up properly, the photography is rubbish on it, and there's a typo on the front cover. That's all first impression stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and that can make you just click away, right? Within seconds you've lost a sale and you won't even know why.
Yeah.
So that first impression is so important.
So much great advice. Thank you so much, Sapna. Before we wrap up, is there anything else, any like standout piece of information that you would really love that every business owner knew about branding or about building a business that you've learned?
Oh, wow. Put it all into a book, didn't I? So I can't summarize it in one sentence, but you know, I mean, the thing that I am always saying over and over again is, your brand is not your logo. So, you know, if people can take that away and think, well, do you have, you know, if I've got clients that say, yeah, I've had my branding done, and they give me a logo, that's not your branding and it's not your brand. So you need to dig a lot deeper if you want to really truly engage your audiences and build a brand that's going to connect. and that lasts.
Yeah, I fully agree. Great advice. Thanks again, Sapna. Now I'm going to put below details of how to find you, and I'll add a link to your book as well if anyone wants to go and check that out. But for anyone who is listening to this podcast on the go, how can they find you?
Well, so they can find me on LinkedIn. That's Sapna Pieroux. I'm the only one on there, so you'll find me there. Do connect. If you want a free sample of the book, you can go to letsgetvisiblebook.com and put your email address in there, and we'll send you a free copy of the free sample of the book. And the book is available to buy on Amazon. So any of those platforms, find me on there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Where's the stop?